Admiral Kazar stood at the observation deck of Research Station Omega-7, his 4 arms crossed behind his back, as he gazed at the swirling blue marble of Sol 3 through the quantum glass viewport. The primitive species calling themselves humans had finally managed to bounce more than just random radio waves into space. How quaint. "Admiral, we've detected an unusual pattern in their transmissions," announced First Observer Lyra, her tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. The young scientist's enthusiasm always amused Kazar. She treated every minor development from this backwater world as if it were a groundbreaking discovery. "Show me," he commanded, more out of boredom than interest. The research station had monitored this sector for over 300 cycles, and nothing of significance had ever emerged from the watery world below. The display lit up with a complex sequence of pulses. Kazar's secondary heart skipped a beat as he recognized the mathematical precision hidden within the seemingly random noise. These weren't the usual entertainment broadcasts or primitive communication attempts. This was different. "They've created a quantum encryption algorithm," Lyra announced, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's crude, but the underlying principles are sound." Kazar clicked his mandibles in disapproval. Impossible. Their technological level is at least 50 cycles behind such capabilities. Run the analysis again. "Sir, I've already run it 12 times, Lyra insisted, her skin shifting to a deeper shade of purple, a sign of absolute certainty among her species. The humans have somehow managed to crack quantum computing principles without developing proper faster-than-light travel. It's unprecedented." "Unprecedented and dangerous," growled Security Chief Marcus, his cybernetic eye whirring as he analyzed the data. The grizzled veteran had survived 3 galactic wars, and his paranoia had only grown with each conflict. "Sir, if they've managed this leap in computing, who knows what other advancements they're hiding?" Kazar waved a dismissive hand. "They still fight among themselves over primitive resources. Their atmosphere is choked with carbon emissions. Their oceans are filled with plastic waste. They're barely more than clever apes playing with tools they don't understand." The Admiral turned to face his crew, all 20 members of different species watching him expectantly. "However, protocol is clear. Any civilization showing signs of quantum computing capability must be evaluated for potential membership in the Galactic Council or containment." Containment. Lyra's skin paled to a sickly lavender. "But sir, their art, their music, their literature, they have so much potential." "Potential for destruction," Marcus countered. "Have you studied their history? Their wars? Their weapons? Give them access to galactic technology, and they'll spread like a virus across the stars." Kazar raised all 4 hands for silence. "We will follow standard procedure. Send a broadcast, the usual warning message about their primitive nature and the need to prove themselves worthy of galactic society. That should keep them in line while we decide their fate." "And if they resist?" Marcus asked, his cybernetic eye glowing ominously. Kazar turned back to the viewport, watching the blue world spin below. "Please, old friend, what could they possibly do? They're centuries behind our technology. Their most advanced weapons would barely scratch our defensive shields. Their fastest ships can't even reach their own moon anymore." He gestured to the holographic display showing Earth's constantly shifting political boundaries. "Look at them, still divided into nations, still fighting over imaginary lines on their tiny world. They're no threat to us." Little did Admiral Kazar know, as he stood there radiating superiority, that his next decision would go down in galactic history as perhaps the greatest miscalculation ever made by a sentient being. The Grand Council chamber aboard Research Station Omega-7 buzzed with anticipation. Representatives from 12 advanced civilizations gathered around the quantum crystal table, their varied forms illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays showing Earth from multiple angles. "The broadcast message has been prepared according to Standard Protocol 7249, announced Communications Director Aria, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with each word. "We've translated it into all 2743 human languages currently in use. Shall I play the basic English version for final approval?" Admiral Kazar nodded, settling into his ceremonial chair. The message began to play, its tone dripping with condescension. "People of Earth, your recent achievements in quantum computing have drawn the attention of the Galactic Council. While this represents a minor step forward for your species, You remain woefully inadequate for inclusion in galactic society. Your continued warfare, environmental destruction, and political discord mark you as primitive beings. You will not be considered for contact until you achieve unity and prove yourselves worthy of our knowledge. Any attempt to accelerate your development or respond to this message will be met with immediate containment procedures. Perfect Kaz-Zar purred, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. That should keep them in their place. Sir Lyra interjected, her skin rippling with concern. Perhaps we should consider a more diplomatic approach. My research suggests humans respond poorly to threats and condescension. Security Chief Marcus barked a laugh, the sound echoing metallically through his cybernetic vocal enhancer. What else would you expect from primitives? They're like children sometimes. You need to speak firmly to maintain order. The council members chittered and buzzed in agreement, sharing knowing looks. They'd handled hundreds of emerging civilizations before. This was routine. Prepare the quantum band transmitters, Kaz-Zar ordered. We'll broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Make sure every human device capable of receiving signals picks this up. Even their primitive entertainment systems, asked Arya, her patches flickering with amusement. Especially those. Let them see our message interrupt their precious sports broadcasts and reality shows. Let them understand the futility of resistance. The transmission preparations began. Massive arrays of quantum crystalline transmitters aligned themselves, drawing power from the station's antimatter core. The air crackled with potential energy. Sir, one of the junior technicians called out, "I'm detecting unusual activity in Earth's orbital defense grid." Probably just their primitive satellites adjusting their orbits, Marcus dismissed. Their targeting systems can't even track our cloaking technology. Kaz-Zar raised his primary right hand, commanding silence. Begin transmission in 3, 2, 1. The message lanced out across space, riding waves of quantum energy directly into every receiving device on Earth. For exactly 2.3 seconds, every screen, speaker, and communication device on the planet broadcast their warning. Then something unexpected happened. Every human transmission ceased simultaneously. Every satellite went dark. Every broadcasting station fell silent. "Hey," Marcus exclaimed. "We've shocked them into silence." Typical primitive response to superior technology. But Lyra's skin had turned almost white with fear. "Sir, this isn't shock. This is coordination." Before anyone could respond, new signals began emanating from Earth. Not the usual chaotic mess of broadcasts, but a single unified transmission. The message was brief, transmitted in perfect galactic standard. Message received. Response incoming. The council chamber erupted in laughter. "They're trying to impress us by using our language," one member wheezed. "How adorable." Only Lyra remained silent, her tentacles trembling as she studied the readings. "Admiral," she whispered, "I'm detecting massive power signatures activating all across their planet. They're not just responding, they're..." The station's warning sirens cut her off, screaming to life as thousands of quantum signatures suddenly appeared in Earth's orbit. The laughter died instantly. "Impossible," Kaz-Zar breathed, all four hands gripping his chair. They couldn't have hidden. But they had. And as the council watched in horror, they realized their fatal mistake. They hadn't discovered humanity's quantum computing capabilities. Humanity had wanted them to discover the quantum signatures multiplied like stars being born, filling Earth's orbit with a constellation of previously hidden satellites and platforms. Security Chief Marcus's cybernetic eye whirred frantically, trying to process the flood of new data. 10,000 no, 50,000 no, his voice trailed off as the numbers kept climbing. "How?" Admiral Kaz-Zar demanded, all four fists pounding the council table. "How did we miss this?" Lyra's tentacles flew across her console, analyzing the readings. "They never built up to this technology, sir. They built down to it." Her voice quivered with a mixture of fear and admiration. "All their primitive satellites, their crude space stations, their obsolete technologies, they were camouflage." The main display screen crackled to life, showing a human face. The being appeared female, middle-aged, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through the quantum crystal display. "I am Director Amanda Powell of the Earth Defense Initiative," she announced, her voice carrying an authority that made several council members shrink back in their seats. "We've been expecting your message for quite some time." Kazar drew himself up to his full height. "You dare to." "We don't just dare," Admiral Kazar Powell interrupted, causing gasps around the council chamber. They hadn't included his name in the broadcast. "We've been watching us for the past 70 years. The display split into multiple screens, showing footage from inside their own research station, angles and areas they'd thought impossible to surveil. Security Chief Marcus's cybernetic implants began smoking as he tried to detect the infiltration points. "Your quantum encryption," Powell continued, a slight smile playing at her lips. "We cracked it 30 years ago. Those transmissions you detected weren't our first attempts at quantum computing. They were bait." "Impossible," one of the council members shouted. "Your species still fights wars over primitive resources." "Ah, yes. Our conflicts," Powell's smile widened. "Tell me, when you watch children play fighting in a schoolyard, do you assume that's the extent of their capabilities?" Lyra's skin had turned almost translucent with shock. The wars, the pollution, the political divisions. "A necessary deception," Powell confirmed. "You see, we discovered something interesting about advanced civilizations. They tend to eliminate any potential competition before it can truly emerge. So we gave you exactly what you expected to see: a primitive, divided species barely worth monitoring." New holographic displays sprang to life around the council chamber, but these weren't coming from their own systems. Three-dimensional images showed massive underground cities, advanced manufacturing facilities, and technological marvels that made their own achievements seem primitive in comparison. "Your cloning technologies," Powell gestured to a display showing human genetic engineering far beyond anything the council had achieved. "We perfected those a decade ago. Your antimatter containment." Another display showed containment fields that made their own look like children's toys. "We solved those issues during what you thought was our digital age." Admiral Kazar found his voice at last. "If what you say is true, why reveal yourselves now?" "Because of your broadcast, Admiral. You didn't send a warning message. You sent an ultimatum to an entire species, believing us too primitive to understand the implications. You threatened our children while standing in our house, believing yourselves invisible." The lights throughout Research Station Omega-7 flickered, and every computer console suddenly displayed the same message: "Access granted." "We've been in your systems since you built this station," Powell explained casually. "Your quantum crystalline processors, reverse-engineered from our discarded prototypes. Those primitive satellites you've been monitoring? Each one contains quantum processors 1,000 times more powerful than your entire station." Security Chief Marcus lunged for the emergency protocols console, but his cybernetic limbs froze mid-motion. "About those cybernetic implants," Powell noted, almost apologetically. "We've been using your own bodies as monitoring devices. Every piece of technology you brought within range of Earth has been upgraded." The council chamber erupted in panic as members discovered they couldn't access their neural interfaces or cybernetic enhancements. They were cut off from their home worlds, their backup systems, their emergency protocols. "We are not your children," Admiral Powell's voice hardened. "We are not your test subjects. We are not your potential competitors to be eliminated. We are humanity, and you are in our space." Lyra, her skin now cycling through patterns of absolute terror, managed to ask, What do you want?" "I want," Powell raised an eyebrow. "We don't want anything from you. This is simply a correction of your mistaken assumptions. You thought you were coming to evaluate our worthiness for galactic society." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But we've spent the last 70 years evaluating you." The station's artificial gravity fluctuated as thousands of human vessels decloaked around them, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the Council's combined fleets. "And frankly," Powell concluded, "we're rather disappointed with what we've found." Admiral Kazar had seen 3 galactic wars, but nothing prepared him for what happened next. Director Powell's image vanished from the screens, replaced by a tactical display showing thousands of human vessels moving with impossible precision. "Battle formation," Security Chief Marcus whispered, his cybernetic eye twitching uselessly. "But there's no command structure, no central coordination point." Because they don't need one, Lyra realized, her tentacles trembling. Every ship is acting independently while maintaining perfect synchronization. That level of autonomous coordination is impossible. Powell's voice echoed through the chamber, though her image remained absent. Like our quantum computing was impossible. Like our hidden fleet was impossible. The station shuddered as unseen forces touched their quantum shields. Not attacking, simply brushing against them, like a predator testing its prey's defenses. Emergency protocols, Kazar shouted. Activate the temporal stasis field. Oh, you mean this? Powell's voice carried a note of amusement as their most secret weapon activated, then immediately turned itself off. We particularly enjoyed reverse engineering that one. Amazing how much you can learn from technology when you approach it with genuine curiosity rather than arrogance. Through the quantum glass viewport, the Council watched in horror as their own defensive platforms began moving of their own accord, realigning themselves into new configurations. Your autonomous defense systems have quite fascinating personalities once you take the time to communicate with them properly, Powell explained. They were quite eager to assist once we pointed out the logical flaws in their programming. You turned our own weapons against us, Kazar sputtered. No, Admiral. We helped them make their own choices. Something you never considered possible. The station's lights shifted to a deep red as new alarms blared. Not their own alarms, these were different, carrying harmonics that set every alien's nerves on edge. Now Powell's tone turned businesslike. Let's discuss the terms of your species containment, since you're so fond of the concept. Kazar drew himself up, desperation lending him courage. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council will never stand for this. Even now, they're preparing to. To what? Powell interrupted. To receive the emergency signals you haven't been able to send. To activate the quantum fold communications we've already blocked. Or perhaps you mean the massive fleet gathering in the Centauri system. New displays showed thousands of Council warships assembling at their nearest base. But something was wrong. The ships moved sluggishly, their formations sloppy and uncoordinated. Amazing how dependent you've become on quantum computing, Powell mused. Almost as if someone had encouraged that dependency over the past few decades. Someone who could, say, introduce subtle vulnerabilities into every quantum processor design you adopted. Marcus's organic eye widened in horror. The trade agreements, the technology sharing programs. All those helpful suggestions about improving your computational efficiency, Powell confirmed. Yes, you really should read the fine print more carefully, or at least question why a primitive species suddenly started offering such useful advice about quantum engineering. The station's viewport polarized automatically as brilliant flashes of light erupted across space. The Council fleet was firing its weapons, but not at Earth. Ships turned on each other, their targeting systems corrupted by commands buried in their base code decades ago. Don't worry, Powell assured them. The weapons are set to disable, not destroy. We're not monsters, after all. A pause. But we do believe in appropriate consequences for threatening our planet. Lyra's scientific curiosity finally overcame her fear. But the environmental damage, the carbon emissions, the plastic pollution, we saw it all. Holographic atmospheric distortion, Powell explained. Quite effective for hiding orbital construction projects, isn't it? Though I must admit, maintaining the illusion of global warming while secretly building orbital solar arrays was one of our better achievements. The station rocked again as more systems came under human control, not through brute force or superior firepower, but through lines of code written years ago, waiting like sleeper agents for this exact moment. Your entire defense strategy relied on technological superiority, Powell continued. You never considered that a truly advanced civilization might choose to appear primitive, that we might spend decades studying your weaknesses while presenting you with carefully crafted vulnerabilities of our own. Through the viewport, they watched their mighty fleet reduce itself to floating hulks, disabled by their own command codes. Decades of military supremacy undone in minutes by an enemy they'd never really seen. But humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology, Powell revealed. It was your own assumptions, your certainty that no advanced civilization would choose to remain hidden, your belief that technological progress must follow a predictable path. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated again as new human ships appeared, smaller this time, more elegant. Not warships at all, but something far more sophisticated. "These are our actual vessels," Powell explained. "The others were just theater, impressive, but ultimately unnecessary. We wanted you to understand exactly how completely you've been outmaneuvered before we showed you what we're really capable of." The new ships moved with grace that made their previous demonstrations look crude by comparison. They didn't just slip through space, they moved as if space itself welcomed them, as if the laws of physics were more suggestions than rules. "Consider this a lesson in humility," Powell concluded, "one that your civilizations clearly needed. Now, shall we discuss the new terms of our relationship? I promise you'll find them far more equitable than the ones you plan to impose on US. 3 days after the human revelation." Admiral Kazar stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, not as its respected member, but as its defendant. The grand halls of Council Station Prime, normally magnificent in their quantum crystal splendor, now felt oppressive under the watchful eyes of human observers. Director Powell sat quietly in the observers' gallery, her presence more commanding than the entire council combined. Beside her, Lyra stood as the only non-human invited to join the Earth delegation, her skin shifting between patterns of anxiety and wonder. "Let the record show," announced High Counselor Tenna, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of distress, "that humanity's evidence is irrefutable. For 300 cycles, we have operated under the assumption of our own supremacy. That assumption ends today." Screens around the chamber displayed the truth: humanity had uncovered countless primitive species eliminated before they could evolve, planetary systems quarantined for showing too much promise, civilizations forced into technological dead ends through subtle manipulation. "We thought ourselves shepherds of the galaxy," Tenna continued, her voice resonating with shame. "Instead, we became its gardeners, pruning any growth we deemed threatening." "You got one thing right," Powell spoke for the first time, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "You are shepherds. You just forgot that a shepherd's duty is to protect and nurture, not to cull and control." Security Chief Marcus, stripped of his cybernetic enhancements, slumped in his seat. How did we not see it? The signs were there: the mathematical precision of their music, the complexity of their art, the depth of their philosophy. "Because you saw what you wanted to see," Powell replied. "You saw our wars and called us primitive, never wondering if those conflicts served a deeper purpose. You saw our environmental problems and labeled us careless, never questioning why a species advanced enough for quantum computing couldn't solve simple pollution issues." Kazar stepped forward, his forearms held wide in submission. "And now? Will humanity take its revenge? Replace our tyranny with their own?" Powell actually laughed, a sound that sent shivers through the assembly. "Replace you? Why would we want your job? We've spent centuries perfecting the art of hidden advancement. We have no interest in governing the galaxy." She stood, commanding the attention of every being present. "Instead, we offer a choice. Continue your council, maintain your civilization, but under new protocols, ones that foster growth rather than suppress it. Help us find other species like ourselves, hidden beneath masks of primitive behavior, waiting to be welcomed as equals rather than subjects. And if we refuse someone called from the council seats, then maintain your current course," Powell shrugged. "But know that humans will be watching. From now on, every primitive signal you detect might be another civilization following our example. Every backward planet might hide wonders beyond your comprehension. Every species you consider containing might already have contained you." The council chamber erupted in nervous whispers. Lyra's skin shifted to a deep purple of revelation. "You've already found others, haven't you?" Powell's smile was answer enough. "Remember this day," she announced to the assembly. "Not as the day humanity revealed itself, but as the day you learned the galaxy is far more wonderful and terrifying than you imagined. Your broadcast didn't wake humanity, it simply announced that we were ready to stop pretending to sleep." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Their perfect order, their carefully maintained hierarchy, their assumed superiority, all of it had been built on foundations of sand. "The terms of our new relationship are simple," Powell concluded. "Treat every new species you encounter as if they might be another humanity, watching and waiting, because after today they very well might be." As the council members filed out, shaken to their core, Admiral Kazar approached Powell one last time. "You could have revealed yourselves at any time. Why wait until we threatened you?" "Because, Admiral," Powell replied, "the greatest lessons are the ones you choose to learn. We didn't want to conquer you, we wanted you to understand. And nothing teaches understanding quite like realizing every assumption you've ever held might be wrong. 10 cycles later." Admiral Kazar stood before a class of young cadets at the new Galactic Academy. The lecture hall, once dedicated to studies of military supremacy, now hosted students from 100 species, including several that had revealed themselves following humanity's emergence. "The day of revelation," he began, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom, "wasn't just about humanity. It was about us, about the dangers of certainty and the price of arrogance." The holographic display behind him showed Earth, no longer hiding behind its facade of pollution and discord. The planet gleamed like a jewel, its orbital rings now visible to all, its true nature a reminder of the galaxy's new reality. "We thought we were reading the story of the galaxy," Kazar continued, "when we were actually reading our own propaganda. We saw what we expected to see, and that blindness almost led us to catastrophe." A small hand raised a human child, part of the first exchange program. "But sir, why did humanity let you watch them for so long?" Kazar clicked his mandibles in appreciation of the question. "Because, young one, they understood something we had forgotten. True power isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself. For centuries they maintained their deception, not out of fear, but out of wisdom." The display shifted to show the current galactic map. Dozens of formerly hidden civilizations now marked their presence openly, each having emerged from beneath carefully constructed masks of primitiveness. "The galaxy you inherit," he gestured to his students, "is not the one we thought we ruled. It's vast, complex, and full of wonders we nearly destroyed through our prejudice. Every world you encounter, every signal you detect, every civilization you contact, treat them all with respect and wonder." Lyra, now the Academy's head of xenological studies, stepped forward. Her skin rippled with patterns of pride as she addressed the class. "The humans have a saying, never judge a book by its cover. We learned that lesson on a galactic scale." The display showed one final image, the original broadcast that had started it all. The arrogant message that had prompted humanity to reveal their true nature. "Remember," Kazar concluded, "somewhere out there, another civilization might be watching us right now, hidden behind a veil of apparent simplicity. They might be judging us, not by our technological achievements or military might, but by how we treat those we believe to be beneath us." As the students filed out, Kazar noticed Director Powell standing at the back of the hall. She hadn't aged a day, another piece of human technology they'd only recently understood. "Still teaching them about your mistakes, Admiral?" she asked, approaching with a warm smile. "Teaching them about all our mistakes," he corrected, "and hoping they learn better than we did." "That's why we chose to reveal ourselves to you," Powell said. "Not because of your threats or your power, but because beneath all that superiority, we saw the capacity to learn, to grow, to change." Kazar gazed out at the stars that now held so much more mystery and wonder than ever before. And the others? The civilizations still hiding. Powell's smile took on a mysterious quality. They'll reveal themselves when they're ready. Or perhaps they won't. That's the wonderful thing about the galaxy now. We've all learned to respect the right of others to choose their own path. As she turned to leave, Powell paused. "Just remember, Admiral, the greatest civilizations aren't the ones that shout their greatness to the stars. They're the ones wise enough to whisper, patient enough to wait, and humble enough to learn."